you have a great interest in human rights, and particularly human rights in the context of digital technologies.
Right.
And you just heard, you may have been completely distracted by the K-pop. I've forgotten what you heard before that, but if you can remember what you heard before the K-pop, you just heard this discussion on digital technologies and AI, and I wondered whether you just had a quick comment about the human rights and in the context of that.
Right, and not only the previous session, but throughout the whole program, I've been thinking about what the responsibility that scientists and engineers have, and using the technologies, but also applying that to education as well. I think that there is a very big human rights component in terms of right to educate, and that education leads to economic development and also all sorts of different things that the humans need at this point. So I think that this session is very significant in that the technology and education taken together will generate those environments. I'm also struck by kind of thought that kind of gave it to me, that the AI and the technology is very adaptable and make it a personalized, a machine for, a learning machine for students. Not only those students who are advancing, or for those students that are kind of falling behind. I think that the machine and the AI can kind of adapt to those different speeds so that their learning could be very much a kind of a human effort. I think that throughout it all, but I think that the message is also very clear that as teachers and as educators, we need the personal touch, empathy, and personal relationships that go together that cannot be replaced by the machines.
Thank you very much.
But I got to confess,
yes.
Half of the stuff I said is from ChatGPT, including the emphasis on human touch. So
but
that's where it is.
But I suppose what we've just heard in the session previous was that that's absolutely fine. That we, if we follow Michael Levitt's advice, we should learn to love it and embrace it,
right,
and use it. So you're on the right path, behaving like a youngster, I would say. So please,
okay,
your session begins.
Thank you for joining us. Well, this session is about the auspicious title, has the auspicious title of Balance Between Fundamental and Applied Knowledge. I mean, I want to take a poll, actually, if I may. Here, we got students, educators, and parents as well. Raise your hand. I'm going to ask 2 questions. Raise your hand, first of all, if you are or plan to be in the science field. But not just the science field, but pure science. Pure science as in fundamental science, basic science. Okay, all right. The second, those who want to be in applied side, engineering. All right, thank you. It seems like we have a balance. I see it about half and half. Well, let me start with you, Professor Michel. This right balance, I mean, how do you take it in terms of whether do we need the right balance or not? What does it mean to have a right balance? We got half and half. It seems like they want to do what they want to do, what they're passionate about, but does it have a significance to have a right balance?
I don't think you can talk about a right balance. But at first I would like to say that I don't really see where the boundary between basic science and applied science is. For instance, it's very clear that if I watch, say, whether there are exoplanets on different suns, different solar systems, this is clearly, in my opinion, basic science. If I want to explore what kind of organisms live in the ocean 6 kilometers below the surface, it's also basic science. If I go to biomedicine, the border becomes already no longer visible, because we try to explore to find out how many proteins the human body has, actually what is their disease relation. If I find out the disease relation, I'm already touching the applied science. Because if I know the disease relation of a protein, I can cure diseases which are caused by a malfunction of that protein. So I don't really see where the difference is. I'm primarily a basic scientist, but I always look, can I apply somehow this knowledge which I create to the benefit of mankind?
Especially, Professor Michel, your study on the research in photosynthesis, it has a lot of implication on the renewable energy generation, so it seems like there is a very close connection to it.
I clearly agree. Photosynthesis overall is a process of very low efficiency. So only about 1% of the sun's energy is actually stored in the biomass. And of course, we then have to study in basic science what are the limitations, and it's pretty clear what the limitations are. We know that we have photo damage, in particular in the so-called light reactions. We know that the mechanism of fixing carbon dioxide to create sugars made in the so-called Kelvin cycle is a very inefficient process. So if we know that, we can try to improve these bottlenecks and transfer this knowledge into the plant system. For instance, in the so-called light reaction, you get in photosystem 2, you reduce compounds called quinones, and if there is too much light, then there is no longer quinone available to be reduced. And the excess energy then causes the photosystem to be destroyed, to be damaged. And now, what turned out now, if we now find mechanisms to increase the quinone concentrations, we can reduce this photo damage. It's clearly already an application. Another point concerns the carbon dioxide fixing mechanism. It is clear that a sugar, ribulose 1,5-biphosphate, is a limiting factor, in particular also the enzyme which uses the compound in order to put carbon dioxide into it. So we can do that. And so far, it's clear that we can increase the yield in model plants like Arabidopsis or tobacco by maybe 70% by increasing the concentration of the quinone around the photosystem 2, and by improving the Kelvin cycle by 60-70% each. And these improvements are not additive. And if we can confer this from the model plants to wheat and rice and corn, we might be able to...
Now you might be going into deep...
Yeah, because we can improve the yield of the crop yield by a factor of 2.
Right.
And this will be a huge effect. Two effects. We feed the world's population, the increasing number of people still on the planet. And on the other hand, due to the increase of photosynthetic yield, we reduce carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere, and we fight global warming. So it's a direct application of our basic knowledge.
Right, there's a close relationship there. Professor No, how would you react to, I think he said, there's no balance. I mean, those two are artificial dichotomy maybe created by the department, the universities. How would you react to that?
I think in terms of that dichotomy, maybe it's not possible to make a very strict dichotomy because it's rather related. And like he said, I mean, scientists who are doing pure science always think about its application to the humankind. So in that sense, it's connected. But when you did the rough poll, that it says roughly half and half, but I think in actual world, like in Korea, there's more engineering departments and engineering majoring students than pure science departments and students. So that's the reality. Then what's the right balance? I think it depends on, different countries and the stages of its development of the country. So it can be very, very different. But there could be some desired proportion that we hope, But
right.
it may be different from the reality.
Professor O, you're the inaugural Is it director? ID,
Yes, right.
so you might be biased again in favor of the basic science, but especially in Korea's case, historically, government focused intentionally on the applied science. So the right balance question, how would you react?
Well, actually, you can think of this as, I think, on 3 different levels. The first, the individual scientist level. If you're a mathematician or a theoretical physicist working on cosmology, you should work on fundamental knowledge. But if you're an engineer, shipbuilding engineer working in an industry, he should pursue the applied knowledge. So depending on the field of study, in individual, it will vary quite a lot. But if you go to the institutional level, the character of institution also will decide how much emphasis we put on this fundamental or how much on applied science. If you look at, you take an example of Germany, if the institution belongs to Max Planck Gesellschaft, they will be mostly interested in fundamental knowledge, although they will be interested in the long-term applied science. If the institution is belong to Fraunhofer Gesellschaft, the institution will focus on applied knowledge. I think the most meaningful question is, as Professor Rowe mentioned, that what about the country level? How much investment we should put on the fundamental science or applied technology? I think it depends on the country and also depends on the stage of economic development. When you are in the developing country, where you need industrialization urgently, you should put more emphasis on applied technology. That's what we did in Korea. But if you are more advanced, and then if you become a responsible member of this advanced country, we should think about contributing to the human, the knowledge of a human being. So we should focus. We can study more on the origin of universe, origin of life, and things like that. So I think Korea is developing in that level. That at the beginning, when the Korea Institute of Science and Technology was founded in 1966, actually you might know that this was helped by United States. And the suggestion at the moment from the United States was that it should be modeled after Bell Lab. But Korean government and Choi Hyung-suk, who was the founding president, said, no. We need more industrial technology more urgently now. So they chose Battelle Memorial Institute model. So they contract research with the industry and they develop the industrial technology. But Choi Hyung-suk, who was the founding president, said in his memoir that if the country has more wealth and developed, we should establish an institution like a Bell Lab. I think that's what IBS is like.
I see.
So it depends on the stage of development, I think.
Let me bring in Professor Novosela. Your the alma mater is in Russia, Moscow, and then you did some work in Netherlands as well, and then University of Manchester. So you've seen the range of different government intentions, maybe, and their environments. How would you react to the question of the right balance between the fundamental and applied sciences?
Well, first of all, let me say that I'm really impressed with this panel, including myself. We're so self-confident and seriously discussing the balance between the applied and the fundamental science, like we can control it. Can we? Like what? Next panel is going to be how many discoveries do we need to make for the next 5-year plan, or what? So I don't think that you can do anything about this balance. It just exists. Of course, on a short-term period, you can probably, and then you can put grants in China that everyone studies photovoltaics, or in Australia, so you can push a certain direction. But then globally, I really don't know why, but science got this global characteristics that it can self-correct its own mistake. It has, and it also this, I think it's a global characteristic of science that it maintains the right balance between the fundamental and applied, at least on the long-term run. So if discoveries are meant to be done, they're going to be done, and I don't think you can prevent or actually much accelerate those. But on the short term, I completely agree. You can push certain directions, and indeed, so you can. So that happened in many countries, and including Korea, or so I'm in Singapore now. In UK, there were so some fields were completely killed. Some fields were promoted. But again, on the long term, I think it just maintains the balance by itself.
Mm-hmm. Professor No, though, I think you mentioned somewhere that the basic science is, in terms of funding, driven in big degree by the government funding.
Correct.
So if the government allocates a lot of budgets, then it will be more of a stimulus to basic science. And on the other side would be also true. So in terms of that, so the government probably has some direction in mind.
Right, right. Like Konstantin has said, that there's nothing, it seems there's nothing much that scientists or science aspiring students can do to get the right balance. But I think for governments, I mean, it's easier to persuade that general public or the policymakers or decision makers to support applied science for a shorter period of economic return. So it's easier to support that because the government wants a big growth, right? Economic growth. Mm-hmm. But companies do spend lots of money to research and development as well, to develop their products. So it's the responsibility, I think, of the government to get the right balance to support basic fundamental science so that it can be transferred in the long term to companies and to other front lines of developing products. So I think it's the role of government to support a long-term investment to the very difficult task of supporting without getting an immediate economic return. I think that's the role of government.
I see.
Yeah.
I think what one should do is one should give autonomy to the scientists. So the government should not interfere too much, because the government cannot decide what important discoveries are to be made or not to be made. One example which comes to my mind is an example from basic biology. Basic bacteriology is the discovery of the CRISPR-Cas9 system, which is used by bacteria to fight infection by viruses. And now this discovery is used to correct genetic diseases in humans and to improve plants. And a number of companies have been founded. We have already $1 billion value on the stock market. And there's a clear example where that unexpected discovery, which cannot be predicted, have tremendous consequences for all of us.
Right. Right. Penicillin is another example. Internet is another example.
Right. Like he mentioned, I mean CRISPR-Cas system, the so-called genetic scissor system for gene editing, could not be possible if the governmental support of the the useless research on bacterial repetitive sequences and how that works and how that is needed to combat a virus attack. I mean, apparently that look useless to make any money. But from that basic knowledge came that CRISPR-Cas gene editing system, which is, I think it revolutionized not only biological researches, but also applied to all different fields, right? Yeah.
Right. There are examples plenty. I mean,
Right,
transistors, again.
right.
Sure.
But isn't it true, though, it might be a sensitive subject, but maybe Professor Novoselov, there are a little bit of tension between the applied community and the basic science communities. And there has been, I don't know, I wouldn't say even bickering, but it seems like there is a different orientations and motivations in going into those fields. But they do have to work together as a normative statement. What do you think would be a good policy?
Well, it was already mentioned several times here that the big problem here is where do you put the boundary, and this boundary is, first of all, is very difficult to put, and it is very blurred. And for me, I would say that there is certain fundamental knowledge which cannot be patented, or which cannot be just put into personal use. You cannot imagine Maxwell equations or Schrödinger equation to be patented, so then no one else is using it, right? So certain knowledge have to be and to be distributed, and I think it's really one of the fundamental rights for people that to know, so that any discovery of this level should be given to humanity. It should be one of those fundamental rights, like the right to live, the right to believe, and the right to eat, and so on. But indeed, there is a question what's the relation between the applied and the fundamental, and I mean, tensions, I'm not sure. Of course, there are, each scientist believes that his field is the best, and his discoveries are the most,
right.
There is no scientist who would say, oh, no, so his science is much better. No, it doesn't happen this way. But maybe what is ugly, what I personally dislike when this the privatization of knowledge impedes the further progress, and it doesn't happen that often. But we do know those examples, and then a lot of money needs to be spent on pushing those boundaries and allowing this progress to happen. So that's probably more dangerous, at least in a short-term run.
Right. Professor O, I think that there is a little bit of consensus that the artificial kind of distinction between these are not really significant. But nonetheless, universities have different departments, and they have some tensions. In terms of innovating or stimulating the collaborations and getting rid of meaningless distinctions, has there been any attempt to make it a kind of a task of the university to make it so?
Sure. I mean, I think in Korea, universities try to break down the barriers between disciplines and departments. The reason is that you all know that the world is changing very fast, and the technology is changing very fast. So if you learn the really current top of the world technology today, in 5 years from now, it's not really top technology. Mm-hmm. So we talked about research here, mostly research, but we should think about education differently. That the students, the university students in the university, well, should they learn applied technology or basic fundamental technology, fundamental knowledge? I think it should be, my personal view is about 8 to 2, favoring fundamental knowledge. So, I mean, even you are working in the semiconductor industry, the maybe second law of thermodynamics is more important than the current technology 10 years from now, even if you are working in the industry. So, because it's changing and you have to adapt to new knowledge. So in the university and education level, you should focus more, even in engineering department, on fundamental knowledge. And I think one effect of government supporting basic science is the manpower training for the future. So basic science is more, fundamental science is smoothly done in universities, and that helps to train future manpower. So we should think about that as well.
I see. Okay. We got about 2 minutes left, but the last question I want to give each of you is, what kind of advice would you give to the students who are looking at this field and I need to decide whether to go one way or the other? I mean, if there are not much distinctions, what would be a criteria you would suggest that they make decision of?
Okay, my suggestion would be that the student should choose what he likes most, what he's most interested in. But this, I think, is the best reason for success.
So follow your passion.
Follow your passion.
Right. Go ahead.
I was relieved when Dr. Kinam Kim from Samsung Electronics says that university education is still very needed. I was relieved. And I think in the university, I think students can just explore new areas and from what they've learned until high school, middle school, high school. So I think they can be open to any opportunities. So I think I hope students to have a very open-minded and to change whatever they've been thinking so far, to change after they go to university, if chances permit. Yeah.
Professor O?
As I mentioned, that in universities, students should try to learn more about fundamental knowledge rather than current applied technology. For example, if you look at AI is very popular now, but the real breakthrough always comes from mathematics. So you should, even if you are working, majoring in studying in AI, you should not forget mathematics in universities.
No, Professor Novosel, you have the last word.
Right, yeah, I would echo Michael here. So the message to the students would be: don't listen to the panel. Don't just follow exactly your heart and just do what you like. So just it's really is the worst possible thing you can do is to jump on the bandwagon or to do something which is fashionable at the moment. So follow your heart and don't be afraid to change subject from time to time to really figure out what you want. Science is huge, and there are discoveries to be made in all possible areas.
Great. I think that the best advice is that sometimes you have to ignore what old people say. But I think the prevailing theme is that follow your passion. I think that's a success ingredient for everybody. Join me in congratulating and also thanking the panel members. Thank you. Thank you very much.